Okay, so let's go through the definitions for a frequency distribution. All right, so we have lower class limits. And again, the lower class limits are the smallest number that belong to the classes. We have upper class limits. The upper class limit is the largest number that belongs to any particular class. So looking back at the frequency distribution, right, the lower class limits are on the left, the upper class limits on the right. Okay. And then we have what's called the midpoint of every class. And the midpoint of the class is the value that's in the middle. So we would actually take the upper class limit minus the lower class limit and divide by 2. Okay. So we're actually going to see this in practice in a second. We have what's called the class width or the class range. The class width or the class range is the difference between two consecutive lower class limits. So if we were asked to find the class width for this example, we would actually take the lower class limit from the second class, which is 48, minus the lower class limit from the previous class, which is 40. So the class width for this particular frequency distribution would be 8. One thing that most people would do would be subtract these two numbers, 47 minus 40, and you get 7, right? And not 8. But if you think about it, and if you use your fingers, you got 40, because you have to include 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. That's actually 8, right? So we subtract the lower class limits, because if you actually subtract from the class itself, you're going to be short one. All right, so that is the class width, or how to calculate the class range. The relative frequency is found by dividing the class frequency by the total of all frequencies. And we're going to see that in a second. And we also have cumulative frequency. And for cumulative frequency is the sum of the frequencies for that class and all previous classes. Okay. So let's take a look at an example. Okay, and it's this last problem. So it says calculate the class width from this data set. Also construct a frequency distribution for the data set using 6 classes. Enter the lower and upper class for each range, and then fill in the appropriate frequency. And then we also have to list out the class range, which is actually the class width, the frequency, right, for each class, the midpoint for each class, the relative frequency for each class, and the cumulative frequency. All right. So I'm actually going to pull out the calculator. And if you have yours, I'll give you a second to pull that out. Because we're going to use a combination of the calculator and drawing this thing out. And I have my oh, here it is. All right, so first off, using the calculator, I'm going to turn this on. And I am going to go into stat. and we're going to put this data into the list. All right, so I hit stat and I want to hit edit. Now, when I hit stat and edit, I'm specifically using list 1. So now, all according to what you have done with the calculator up to this point, you should see like list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4. If your calculator looks something other than list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4, this is what you should do. I'm going to go back to the home screen. So anytime you hear me say home screen, I'm using this quick key and it's yellow. So I'm going to hit second in mode, and that's the home screen. I'm going to go back into stat. I'm going to scroll down to setup editor. I'm going to hit enter once, and I'm going to hit enter twice. Okay, so what this is going to do is not going to erase any data, but it is going to set your list up. So I'm going to go back into stat, and I'm going to go into edit. So you should now see list 1, list 2, list 3, and that actually goes out to, I believe, 6 lists. Right, and then it should start back over at list 1. All right, so we can actually store 6 columns of data, but in this class, we're only going to work with the first 2, list 1 and list 2. I am going to enter these numbers into the calculator, right? So now if you have any data that's in your list, you can go in and delete each one separately. Right, I could just hit delete and delete each one separately. Or if I have a lot of numbers in the list, I can go to the very top. I can hit clear and enter, and that's going to erase all of the numbers in the data set. So now I'm just going to put the numbers in. So, and after every number, you want to hit enter. And let me just double check what I have.
So you enter every number.
And then enter.
It's the whole thing.
That's right.
It doesn't matter what order you put.
Doesn't matter what order. So I kind of went down. You can go across, however you want to do it. But we're going to use a calculator to put this in order from the, you can either put it in order from the largest to smallest or the smallest to largest. And we'll see why in just a second. So let me just double check my numbers. Okay, so I have everything in order. Well, not in order, but I have all of the 20 numbers. All right. So now I'm going to put this in order from the largest to the smallest, or you can even put it in order from the smallest to the largest. All right, so I'm going to go back to my home screen. So I'm going to hit second in mode, which is the quick key. All right, I'm just going to clear out my home screen. Oops. All right, so I'm just going to clear out my home screen. I'm going to go back in the stat. And then you have this sort A and sort D. Sort A, you can put it in ascending order. Sort D and ascending would be going up, or you can put it in descending order, which would be going down. All right, so I'm going to put it in ascending order. So I'm going to hit sort A. I'm going to hit enter. Now you got to tell the calculator what you want to sort. So we actually put the data in the list 1. So down here, I see list 1, list 2, list 3, all the way to list 6. I want to sort list 1, so I'm going to hit second and the number 1. I'm going to close off my parenthesis and hit enter. Right? And it just says done. In order to see that list sorted, I want to go back into stat. And where it says edit, I'm going to hit enter. And now there are the numbers in order from smallest to largest. Okay. And this is going to be kind of become handy as we go along, just to put stuff in order. Question?
Before you did that to sort them out, why did you do second mode?
That's called the home screen. Like if I hit second in mode, this is called a home screen, and you want to put all your formulas or any calculations you do for the list into this home screen section. And you're going to see why you kind of work with this, because if you don't go to your home screen, if you're still in that list thing and you put sort A, you're going to see an error message pop up. Okay, so you want to do all your calculations on this home page. Okay. So from the home page, we sorted list 1, and now I can actually look at my list by going back into stat and edit. Okay. So now this is why this is important, is because we're setting up the frequency distribution, and we want a total of 6 classes. Right now, it's going to tell us how many classes we should have. Right? Anytime you're constructing a frequency distribution. So let me flip this over. So the first thing we have to do in constructing a frequency distribution is we have to figure out the class widths. We got to figure out the lower limit for the first class, and we also got to figure out the class width. Okay, so this is what I did not do the last time was all right, so we're going to construct a frequency distribution using 6 classes. Right, so the first thing we want to do is find the class width. So there's actually a formula for that. We're going to take the largest number minus the smallest number, and we're going to divide by the number of classes. Right. All right, so that's the first thing we want to do, find the class width. So what's the largest number and what's the smallest number? Right. So if I look at our list, we have the smallest number is 11, and the largest number is what? 56. So we have 56 minus 11 divided by the number of classes, which is what? 6. So if we do the math on that, 56 minus 11, so I'm going to go back to the home screen, all calculations on the home screen. 56 minus 11, and notice I hit enter, divided by 6 is 7.5. Now you gotta be careful on this calculator, because if I were to put in 56 minus 11 divided by 6, I'm gonna get something totally different. That's because of the order operations. You have to simplify the top, simplify the bottom, and divide last. So I could have put it in this way with a set of parentheses. 56 minus 11, close off the parentheses, because order operations, you do what's in the innermost parentheses first. Divided by 6, we give us 7.5. All right.
Actually, 56 minus 11 divided by 6 is 11 divided by 6.
That's right. If you were to do it this way, the calculator is doing the order operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So you got to divide and multiply before you subtract. So it's actually dividing this up first, and then it's subtracting 56 minus its value. So, but what we want to do is we want to simplify the top, simplify the bottom, and divide last. All right, so we get 7.5. You always round up to the nearest integer. And that's always. So if we round 7.5 up to the nearest integer, we get 8, right? So you always round up, no matter what this number is. So let's just say if this were 8 exactly, I would have to round that up to 9. You always round up. I think there's a problem where it was last semester.
And what now?
I said, let's just say if we got a nice even number here, which was 8, you would still round that up to 9. Always round up to the nearest integer. Okay. So even if this thing's like 7.1, because usually you think of rounding, you round to the nearest whole number. No, you always round up 1. So our class width should be 8. Right? The lowest one.
She said you lost her.
Okay. On which part? Okay. So first you got to find the class width, right? So to find the class width, there is a formula. The largest number in the data set minus the smallest number divided by the number of classes. So 56 was the largest number because we put them in order. 11 was the smallest, and we have 6 classes. So we got 7.5. You always round up to the nearest integer. So I have to round this 7.5 up to 8. You would still round that up to 8. That's right.
If it's like 5 or like 4.6 or 5.3.
Well, now if it's 4.6, you would round that up to 5. If it's 5.3, you would round that up to 6. So what I'm saying is, if it's 6, you round it up to 7. You always round to the nearest whole number. All right, question?
So that's only in the class width, or that's about like?
That's only in the class width. Only in the class width.
Can you scroll up a little bit?
Right here? Okay.
So the one-
Quick question.
Uh-huh.
Would you go back over how you got that very last part, how you put that in the calculator, the very last part?
This right here, the 50.
Yeah, I've got the L1 and all the numbers in, but how did you do that again?
Okay, so first, do you have your list sorted in order?
Yeah, starts at 6.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the home screen. So I'm going to put in this class width formula.
Uh-huh.
Now, the first time I did it, I didn't use parentheses. I just put in 56 minus 11. And that gave me 45. And I just took 45 and divided that by 6. Okay. And then the second way I put it in the calculator, I put a parenthesis around the 56 and the 11. So I kind of put that one in this way. 56 minus 11 and close off your numerator divided by 6 to get the 7.5. All right, so we know that 8 is our class width. All right, so I'm going to go back to the list again for a second. Okay, and I'm going to write out the frequency distribution. So we have the classes over here. We want the frequency in the next column. We want the midpoint in the next column. We want the relative frequency in the next column. And we want the cumulative frequency in the last column. All right. And we know that the class width should be 8. So remember we talked about the class width. In order to find the class width, you have to subtract the 2 lower class limits, right? Okay, so this is how this is going to play out. So our smallest number is 11, right? Our class width is 8. So if I were to add 11 plus 8, I get what? 19. So 19 should be the lower class limit for my second class. Does that make any sense? Because if I take 11, well, because 19 minus 11 is 8, right? So that means that the upper class limit for the first class should be 18. That's right, the class width. So think about it now. So if I take 11 through 18, if I were just subtract 11 minus 18, I'm going to get what? 7. But if I go 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I get what? 8. So this is why I did this. I found the smallest number, which was 11, and then I added 8 to the 11 to get 19. So that means the lower class limit, or the upper class limit for the first class should be 18, right? So I'm just going to pretty much do this in order. So 19 plus 8 is what? 27. Oops. So what's going to be the upper limit for the second class? 26. 27 plus 8 is what? 35. So the upper limit for the third class is what? 34. 35 plus 8 is 43. So the upper class limit for the fourth class is 42. So remember now, the largest number in my list is 56. Right? So 43 plus 8 is 51. So the upper class limit for the fifth class is 50. And then my upper class for the last class is 58. Is everybody okay with that?
I know you got the 8, like the
Right here, the class width.
For the classes.
Right, so we got 8.
Yeah.
So this was the smallest number in our list, right, which was 11. So then what I did was I added 11 plus 8 to get 19.
Okay.
Because that's that class width definition. You got to subtract. Right, because if I subtract 19 minus 11, I get 8. So then what I did in order to find this upper limit was I just backed down by 1. So I kind of went in a little zigzag pattern on finding.
Like the other three.
That's right, that's right. I know it's kind of like confusing because the tendency is to just subtract these two. But you want to subtract the lower class limits. Right. So is everybody okay with this? The classes. All right. So now that's the first part. You take the lower number, the smallest, well, you take the largest number minus the smallest number, divide by the number of classes, and you always round up, right? So we rounded the 7.5 up to 8. Then we mapped out our classes. We used the smallest number as a starting point, and then I kind of went in a zigzag pattern to find the class width, and then I kind of backed down 1 to find that upper limit. So now we have to find the frequencies. So the frequencies, remember, are nothing more than counts. So I'm going to look back at my calculator, and I want to find the number of counts between 11 and 18. So we have 11, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So there are 5 numbers between 11, including 11 and 18, right? So my frequency for that class is 5. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Oh my God. Okay, so this is 5, right? So how many numbers between 19 and 26? Should be 1, 2, 3. Right. How many numbers between 27 and 34? Should be 3, 5, 2, and 2. I'm just going to fill the rest of these out. So is everybody okay with the frequencies? They're nothing more than counts. So now for the midpoint, there is a formula. It is the upper class limit minus the lower class limit divided by 2. So I'm going to find the midpoint for the first class. So that's 18 minus 11. And I'm going to hit enter divided by 2.
Is it 4?
And I get 3.5. No, I'm sorry, this is plus. Yeah, because if I minus, I have to go back and add it to. Okay, I'm sorry, that should be plus. Let me do that again. 18 plus 11 divided by 2 is 20. And that's where the order operations come in. 18 plus 11, 14.5. That's the midpoint. Okay, yeah, let me put that in a set of parentheses. All right. So if I were to find the midpoint for the second class, 19 plus 26 divided by 2 is 22.5. And I can just actually add the class frequency to get the rest. I mean, the class width. I could add 8. So if I add 8, I get 22.5 plus 8 is 30.5. Right? That would be the same thing as 27 plus 34 divided by 2. I could add 8 again to get 38.5. 8 again to get 46.5. And 8 again to get 54.5.
So I get that part, so that's my calculator kind of.
Okay.
So the frequency is all of the, numbers that I'm kind of confused about that part.
The frequencies are, so let's say 11 through 18. That's all of the numbers. I got to count them. 11 is 1, 13 is 2. So any questions up to this point? So we got the class width. We found that. We use the class width and the smallest number to map out the classes. Then we found the frequencies in each class, right, by using the assorted data. And this is a good reason why to use a calculator to sort it out, because if you were looking at that table of just random numbers, you may have missed something or added something. And then we found the midpoint, right? The midpoint is the lower class limit plus the upper class limit divided by 2. So once you find this first midpoint, you could actually just add 8, which is that class width, and that will give you all of the other midpoints. Now we want to find the relative frequency. So the relative frequency is that's equal to the class frequency, right? And we have all of the class frequencies, right? We have them on this second column, divided by the total of all frequencies, right? So in order to find the total of all frequencies, we're going to have to add up all of the frequencies, right? So actually, how many numbers do we have? 20 numbers, right? So if you take 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 5 plus 2 plus 2, you should get 20. So we have a number of 20 counts, right, or 20 data points. So if we wanted to find the relative frequency for this first class, I'm going to take the frequency for that class, which is 5, and I'm going to divide it by 20. Right. So if we convert that to a decimal, I don't know how to answer one. Sometimes they want you to write them as a fraction, but you have to make sure when you write out fractions that they're always in the lowest form. So you could actually get the calculator to do that. So I can put in 5 divided by 20, right? And it's going to give me 0.25. Now, this is where you can change it to a reduced fraction. If I hit math, now this is what this first option means. It'll take whatever is given, and it will attempt to write it as a fraction. Sometimes it'll write it as a fraction, sometimes it won't, but most often it will. So I'm going to use this first function. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit enter again. And we have 5 over 20 reduces down to 1/4. All right. So if you were to put in 5 over 20, you know, it's mark it incorrect probably because it's not in lowest form. If we were to calculate the relative frequency for the second class, we see that the frequency for that class is 3 divided by the total frequencies, which is 20. And 3 over 20, that's already in lowest form, but if we were to convert that to a decimal, 0.15. So the frequency for the next class is 3 over 20, which is 0.15. The fourth class, its relative frequency is 5 over 20, which is the same thing as 1/4 or 0.25. Right. For that next class, the relative frequency is 2 over 20, which is 1/10 or 0.1. And the same is for the last class, right? Its frequency is 2 divided by the total frequency, which is 20. All right, and we have 0.1. So any questions about relative frequency? Okay, now for the last column is cumulative frequency. The cumulative frequency is the frequency for that class plus previous classes. Right? So here's what I mean by that. So I'm going to start with this first class. It has a frequency of 5 because it has no other classes before it, right? So it's the definition for cumulative frequency is the frequency of that class plus all previous. So if I look at the second one, it has a frequency of 3, right? Plus the previous class, which is 5, so its cumulative frequency is 8. So that's just like a final exam. When they say the final exam is cumulative, it covers all of the other chapters. The same thing for the cumulative frequency. It's the frequency of that class plus all previous frequencies. So for the third class, its cumulative frequency is 3, but 3 plus 3 plus 5 is 11. The next cumulative frequency is 16, 18, and then 20. It should add up to, yeah, these two numbers should equal.